Larry, it's like a DOJ belly flop contest over here. Everybody out of the pool. Is William Barr taking another dive for the Clintons?
The answer is yes. Okay. As
In a word.
Hate to be right so much, Jason. I wish sometimes I'd be proven wrong, but clearly the deep state in Washington has all kinds of stuff on Barr. And he's taken a dive. First, he took a dive on Comey. Even the Obama-appointed Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, recommended the indictment, in effect, of James Comey. Then also with regard to Andrew McCabe took a dive on that. And now, of course, with regard to Mrs. Clinton and Bill Clinton and Chelsea Clinton, with regard to the Clinton Foundation, that I locked horns with several years ago in a RICO case I filed in the Southern District of Florida. Jeannie Rhee, not coincidentally, a Mueller prosecutor, was defending the Clinton Foundation. Well, it continues on, and it is so predictable. As the French say, the more things change, the more they remain the same. And of course, we remember that in 1789, the French began the French Revolution at the same time that we had our Constitution. They had enough, and I believe the American people eventually will have enough as well.
Yeah. These swamp creatures, Larry, they're kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger in that they just don't die, right? They seem to keep coming back. Jeannie Rhee was the prosecutor who we heard about during the Citizens Grand Jury. Dr. Corsi told us how she showed up in court wearing a cellophane blouse.
Yeah, apparently at the grand jury, she wore a see-through blouse. I guess she wanted to distract Jerry, but regrettably for her, he wasn't distracted. So,
yeah.
In any event, actually, ironically, at the Roger Stone trial, on the day that the jury came back with a verdict, all the prosecutors from Mueller's office came in. I was actually sitting next to her. I'm sure she knew that was me. I didn't say hello. Whoa. But it's kind of ironic. It's pretty funny.
Absolutely.
That, these people show up. They're like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. They never go away.
Absolutely. Larry, there's a lot of social engineers who are making kind of a big deal out of the fact that Dr. Corsi didn't testify at the Roger Stone trial. George Webb even asked, why didn't Dr. Corsi testify for his friend? Isn't it true that people can't just show up in court and testify for friends or non-friends? You've got to be subpoenaed.
Yeah, that's correct. And in fact, Dr. Corsi was subpoenaed by both sides. The subpoena that was issued by Stone's lawyers was really inoperative. They were so incompetent that they got the date wrong. They subpoenaed him a month before the trial, with the wrong month on. That never became an issue because they never called him, and the prosecution didn't call Dr. Corsi either. And he said that if he would testify, he would testify truthfully. And, he didn't wish Roger Stone any harm. Unfortunately, Roger Stone wished him a lot of harm, and there are several defamation lawsuits that have been filed for both Dr. Corsi and yours truly against Roger Stone, because unfortunately Roger can't control himself, and that's how he got himself into deep hot water. That's how he wound up getting indicted and then convicted on 7 felony counts, for which he will be sentenced in February.
Yeah. But back to William Barr for a second. I think this whole thing came about on Thursday. This was strange because this seems to me like a little bit of social engineering on the part of the Clintons or the Washington Post or whoever is behind it. We know that Andrew McCabe is now a contributor to the Washington Post in addition to CNN. We know that the podfather, John Podesta, is a contributor to the Washington Post. It's a long time, basically, tool of the CIA. It's interesting to me, Larry, that this thing came out at like 6:30 p.m., 6:56 p.m. on Thursday, and it's saying that the Justice Department winds down the Clinton-related inquiry. Once championed by Trump, it found nothing of consequence. The thing goes on to qualify this thing as merely an exercise to mollify conservatives. I mean, isn't that a little bit inaccurate?
Well, of course it is. Here's how it happened. Here's how it went down based on experience. This is what I believe happened, is that Barr wanted it leaked. In other words, the Justice Department wanted it leaked during a time period that people weren't focusing on Clinton or investigations. They were dealing with the aftermath of the Iranian shoot down of the Ukrainian airliner, what was happening with Iran generally, and Trump's taking out Soleimani. So they did it during a period of time that they thought nobody would be watching. And how do they do it? They give the information that they're taking no action to David Kendall of Williams and Connolly, who's been the Clintons' lawyer for many years. I've locked horns with David over and over and over again during the Clinton years and thereafter. And they represent Williams and Connolly, the Washington Post. So that's how it gets to the Washington Post. Now, when I was fighting Clinton at Judicial Watch in particular, they would always leak things to the Post. They would smear me through the Post. I had to bring a lawsuit against one of their reporters, David Siegel, that came out with stuff that, frankly, I don't want to get into, which dealt with my family. And I sued them for that. And it went all the way up the line at the D.C. Superior Court and the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. And of course, in that town, the Washington Post is protected. The judges there, by the grace of God, they have terrible stories written about them, so they protect them. But the Post has become much worse than those days. Owned by Jeff Bezos, it's become radical left. It's totally in the hip pocket of the Democrats, the Clintons, and everybody else. And it's become a total rag. Just going back a few years, after I got the 2 preliminary injunctions against the NSA in joining the mass surveillance, a good reporter by the name of David Montgomery, a nice person, a decent human being, contacted me and he said, I want to write a profile about you for the Washington Post magazine. And I was very hesitant to have that happen because I remember how they would do hit jobs on me during the Clinton years. But I decided to do it. And David did a relatively fair piece. You can find it up on our website at freedomwatchusa.org or just Google it. It's called Larry Klayman versus Everyone. Larry Klayman, will he succeed ultimately with his NSA case, something like that. But it was fair. Now, in the years since 2014, when that was done, or maybe it was early 2015, the Post has gone far left. It's going off the charts. David Montgomery, people like that can't write articles like that anymore. They're even semi-fair. And it has become a total hack job over there at the Post. It always was, but it's much worse today.
Yeah. And this is where we get the awesome picture of you standing there sort of ready for legal battle in the Washington Post. It's really troubling. I mean, it's not just enough to say that it's moved far to the left, because I really do believe it is a tool of social engineering. It's constantly putting out misleading stories, fake stories. I mean, you spoke about this smear they did against you. They love to take something that has maybe a little grain of truth and then totally take it sideways.
Well, they do. They don't report anything fairly. I've had my differences with the Disciplinary Council, District of Columbia Bar. Matters are on appeal, and I'm confident of success in the end. But they try to smear you. They jumped on it immediately. And, this is typical of what you expect in Washington, D.C., in particular with the media there. And the media, frankly, everywhere, except for a few exceptions. I don't believe any of them anymore. I don't believe, MSNBC, CNN. I don't believe Fox News. I turn it off. I watch the Golf Channel or the Tennis Channel. I get the news on the Internet mostly. Because they all lie.
Right.
And here's a good example. How many times has Sean Hannity and the guests that he puts on every single night, the Sarah Carters, the Greg Jarretts, the whole lot of them, how many times have they told the listeners that there was going to be justice by John Huber, over the Clinton Foundation, how there was going to be justice from the new legal messiah, Bill Barr, how there's going to be justice in the future by John Durham. I was just watching the other night when this came out, and on the show that night was Sean Hannity, of course, and then you had Sarah Carter, you had Tom Fitton of my former group, and they all looked like they had giant eggs on their face. Because you can't keep promising this stuff over and over again and have people believe you. Because the reason that you're promising this is either if you're, on Fox News to boost ratings and ad dollars, or if you're Judicial Watch, you're trying to, raise money. But, you shouldn't say things that are not going to be correct. And there's been enough history here, the past is a prologue, to know that our government is corrupt top to bottom, our law enforcement system is totally broken, and that these things are fixed. And that's the way it is. So your meme is very good. It's funny, but you can make a lot of points with humor. To have, fat Bill Barr jumping off a diving board, with Hillary Clinton watching. Actually, Hillary's never looked so good. You really did her justice. She'll probably like it. You should send her this meme. One of the things, it's pretty funny when I represented Jennifer Flowers and, and she's remained a friend. At that time, there was a centerfold that came out on Penthouse magazine about her.
Yep.
And, I asked her about it, and she started laughing. She said, Hillary could never have a centerfold done of her because her rear end would not fit on the page. And, right. So, but you made her look good, send it to her.
Well, I've sent her a bunch of things. I don't know if this will be one of them, but you may notice, Larry, that I've got the He's With Her logo pointing right from William Barr over to Hillary Clinton. I mean, I basically share your view. I don't have a lot of confidence in William Barr. You were one of the first people I consulted with when he was brought in as Attorney General. And of course, his history working for George H.W. Bush, being sort of like the fixer for all the Iran-Contra guys. Very troubling. I don't know why Donald Trump would have appointed him over, say, Matthew Whitaker. Here's what it is.
Whoever you put in there, if they're a politician, Jason, is that the deep state, the intel agencies, the FBI has dirt on everybody in Washington, D.C. And they particularly have dirt on Barr. So he knows he's been threatened with criminal contempt with regard to what happened with Mueller when he declared there was no Russian collusion. He was threatened with impeachment. They have the dirt on him. They have the dirt on the Chief Justice. Watch what happens during this impeachment trial. It's going to be frightening to watch this Chief Justice sit over the impeachment trial. They've got his number. And, everybody in Washington. So they don't want to push too hard. And what they sell is a bill of goods to the American people. And what really gets under my skin and really gets me upset is the American people need to be told the truth. So that's why I appreciate what you're doing and letting me talk, because all you hear is bullshit on Fox News. And it's offensive because night in and night out, they're promising stuff that they know is not going to happen. Hannity has enough experience to know that this is not going to happen, but he's got to keep his viewers. He now gets 4 million viewers a night. He's raking money hand over fist. Fox News is up in its ratings, at least at night. They have these characters like Napolitano and Chris Wallace on the other side that are doing the bidding of Lachlan Murdoch, who's the owner now and CEO, and he's a leftist. So they talk out of both sides of their mouth, but in the prime time they're raking in the dollars, by telling conservatives bullshit, and this is what bothers me a lot. And excuse the French, okay, but that's what it is. There's not another word other than bullshit for what you hear.
Well, but I mean, again, I share your general sentiment, but I'm holding out hope that just like when Donald Trump got elected, a lot of people didn't think that could happen, and it certainly defied all, past precedents. Isn't there any chance that Durham could, pull this thing out of the toilet and make something good happen?
No. And the difference between your analogy, we talked about this earlier, is that with Donald Trump, the people decided that. You see? They voted. In this case, it's the deep state at the Justice Department that will make the call. Look, I've got an oral argument in the Bundy appeal of Klayman Bundy and his son set for March 23rd. Their indictment was thrown out by an Obama-appointed judge because the prosecutors got caught lying, suborning perjury. A whistleblower came forward that talked about a kill list on the heads of the Bundys. Exculpatory evidence was withheld. And even an Obama appointee, Gloria Navarro, had to throw it out to save her own career, because up to that point in time, she did everything she could to persecute the Bundys and the other defendants. Klayman was kept in prison, first in solitary confinement, then for 2 years. His sons were kept in prison for 2 years. They were denied their speedy trial rights. They were denied their right of counsel, which was me. I had to advise from the sidelines. Now I'm actually counsel of record at the Ninth Circuit because I'm a member of the Ninth Circuit, so I'm handling the appeal for Klayman. But who took that appeal? The Bill Barr Justice Department took that appeal. Surprise? And he let the U.S. Attorney in Nevada that wants to cover its derriere for all of its crimes to decide to appeal it. The Solicitor General in Washington, D.C. never even signed the notice of appeal or the appellate briefs. So Barr is in large part not even control of his own department, but it was the Trump Justice Department that did that. And, for the president, I love the president, but him going around talking about, that he put great people in at the Justice Department, that's not true. Talking about these great judges that he put on the bench, they're almost as bad as the Obama and Clinton appointees. They have no courage. They have no guts, the ones that I've encountered. so far. Maybe I'm holding out hope. Maybe there's a good one down there in Palm Beach that I have for Laura Loomer's case. But the ones in Washington, D.C. are the flip side of Obama and Clinton. They're worthless. They're establishment figures that were put there by establishment people like Don McGahn, who was White House counsel, Federalist Society, which is establishment so-called conservative. And these people got where they got because of large campaign contributions, by and large, by their firms, corporations, or labor unions. And it's political patronage. Our justice system is run by a bunch of political hacks. So zero chance, Jason. I know you're not a betting man, but, I'll wager anything that nothing happens with regard to John Durham. And as far as I know, no one's ever been called in front of a grand jury yet. There's no report of that. That would have leaked. How are they gathering information if there's no grand jury?
Wow. I mean, that's a good point. It's very upsetting news. There was a tweet earlier today from John Huber that I'm looking for. I mean, this guy's an idiot. He's doing nothing. He's tweeting about something. Let me see if I can find this here. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but he basically did nothing. I can't seem to locate it right here, but he was tweeting that, how could something or other happen? And I responded, how could he investigate the Clintons?
Look who Hoover is. Hoover is a U.S. attorney. How do you get to be a U.S. attorney? Through political patronage. I once applied in Miami to be the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida. And lo and behold, guess who I lost to? The roommate of Jeb Bush. Okay. Right. So Daddy Bush didn't stay in power more than 3 more months, so he was out too. Martinez was his name. And that's after that I decided to start my own Justice Department, which was Judicial Watch. But that's the way it works. Now, Hoover, that's how he was appointed. John Durham, the same thing. Political patronage to get to be U.S. attorney in Connecticut. These people are political animals. They are establishment animals. They don't stick their neck out. Not going to happen here. With regard to the Clintons or Comey or McCabe, Comey's got more dirt on anybody than you can imagine. You go out and look at, if you want to hire a private investigator, a lot of them come out of the FBI. What do they try to sell you? They sell you that they still have contacts at the FBI, that they can get information illegally from the FBI under the transom or over the transom, however you want to put it, because they've got contacts at the FBI. That's what Giuliani was doing too. Okay, he got any information he needed out of the FBI. That's the way it works. And what's happening to Giuliani now? He's stuck his neck out a little too far, and he's getting his head chopped off. He may wind up getting indicted too, because he's not a protected species like the Clintons.
I found the tweet here, Larry. This is from Huber. He was talking about Bill Barr's also idiotic press conference about the Florida shooting. He's saying that a terrorist fires upon American heroes. His iPhones are lawfully seized. Federal court authorizes searches of the data on those phones for vital evidence. Agents can't get in because of technology, and Apple has not given any help. What's wrong with this picture? Now, in my view, it was pretty strange how quickly they conducted this investigation when you look at how much time goes by when they don't investigate anything like Hillary Clinton's email server, 9/11, any of these type of things. But Larry, isn't this a major overreach that they want to be able to penetrate everybody's phone, and when somebody comes up with the technology to protect our privacy, they want to just smash right through it?
Yes, it is an overreach to penetrate everybody's phone. It is not an overreach if you have an honest court that will review an application for a warrant to do it with a particular person like this terrorist up in the panhandle of Florida. Now, I've never said that our intel agencies and FBI should not have authority if there's actually probable cause that someone's committing a crime or communicating with terrorists. So on a case-by-case basis, that's what should be done. However, courts frequently just rubber stamp what the FBI wants.
Right.
And of course, now we have a situation, with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, where all these years they just looked the other way with regard to the issue of the Steele dossier and Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele. And when it came time that the facts were staring them in the face to some extent through Michael Horowitz, and his Inspector General report, then the Chief Judge, Rosemary Collier, who's known as one of the least intelligent judges on that court, a Republican, by the way, all she says is, Jay, I think you ought to make reforms. And then who do they point to make reforms? A political hack, who, we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I forget his name. An Obama-appointed political
something?
hack. Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, David Chris.
David Chris.
Yeah.
David
Cheryl
Chris.
Atkinson
David
wrote
Chris
this
steak.
article.
Yeah, he should be making steaks rather than doing this. Maybe he's the husband of Ruth Chris. I mean, who knows? but this guy's a hack. Okay, so they're not making any reforms. And I asked them a long time ago to look into the FISA abuse, and they looked the other way. And of course, they're the ones that were rubber stamping the mass surveillance that Snowden revealed. That gave rise to my lawsuits against them. They were just rubber stamping that.
Wow.
Getting all Verizon phone records of anybody who used Verizon wireless, So they're a bunch of hacks. Here, I'm on a tear tonight, Jason. Okay, you got me riled up.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I'll tell you something. Figuratively speaking, I preach peaceful and nonviolent revolution. I preach, doing it legally and peacefully. That's why we have our citizens' grand juries, and we're going to be indicting. We've indicted Mueller. We're going to try him. We're going to indict Comey. We're going to indict McCabe. We're going to indict the Clintons again. I already did it once years ago in Ocala, Florida. We're going to go after the Bruce Orrs. We're going to go after the John Brennans, the James Clappers. But, figuratively speaking, when the revolution breaks out, the first of the guillotines should be the federal judges, because they are the most guilty. They're the most culpable. They're the ones that look the other way. They're the ones that are there to protect us. And they have become, by and large, political hacks that have gotten in there through political patronage, and it's not much different. In fact, it's worse than during the days of King George III when he had his yes men on the bench. Of course, they didn't have yes women then. They just had yes men. And that's why we fought a revolution. That's why when he took our justice system back, the king, to the court of St. James, we said we've had enough. We're starting our own country with a legal system that works, a system of laws and not men, as John Adams said. Because what we have now is a system of men and not laws, because the rich and powerful and the elite and the club in Washington, D.C. walks off scot-free, and the rest of us have to play by the rules. And that's why if there ever is a revolution, and I don't advocate harming the judge or anything like that, believe me, I don't. But figuratively speaking, if this was France, 1789, the first of the guillotines would be the federal judges.
It's interesting, Larry, this thing in Epoch Times talking about the reforming of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. We've got an event happening later this week here in New York City at the NYU Law School. Andrew McCabe and Andrew Weissman are going to give a speech about reforming the FISA process. I mean, is that not ridiculous? This is like a fox telling you how to keep your chickens in the henhouse, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, that goes without saying. But that's typical. Look, it's the beautiful people. It's the beautiful people. Ricky Gervais's monologue. Why don't we play that? 8 minutes of it, Jason, if you can call it up.
I put it on my radio. They'll ding the video. I can't do it.
Why would they ding it?
It's copyright use of whatever.
You can use a portion of it.
Well, let's do that another time. People can look it up. It was a good speech that he gave. He basically cracked on everybody there at the Golden Globes for being friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and now they've invited Ricky Gervais to never host the Golden Globes again. Yeah, well, actually, it's on YouTube, so it's now in the public domain. But what did he say? Okay. I mean, he stuck it up the derriere of everybody in Hollywood, but he wasn't just doing it with regard to Hollywood. He was doing it with regard to Washington, D.C. Washington is this flip side of Hollywood. That's where the expression comes, Washington, D.C. is Hollywood for ugly people. Right. It's the same thing. And there you go. NBC will hit me. They will. No, I'm telling you. It's on YouTube. I hear you, but it happens all the time, Larry. I play a video like this, and it'll get me. All right, well, I don't want you to get into any kind of trouble, but it's legally okay. I'm not telling you not to do it. If it's on YouTube, it's in the public domain. But in any event, I urge people to watch it because Ricky Gervais, who's a liberal, simply had enough. He comes on and he says, look,
Number one, I don't ever want to do this show again. I give up. It's over. And then he gets into everything, every single thing. And then he ends it by saying, I want you to, if you get an award tonight, I'm just paraphrasing, come up here, get your award. Don't make any political speeches. Don't think that you know more than the rest of this country. You have less education than a particular actress. I forget whose the name is. And thank, the foreign press.
Hollywood Foreign Press Association.
Believe in God. Of course, he's an atheist. And then get off the stage. Okay? And, for that, he'll never be invited back to the Golden Globes again, probably. My friends were predicting that he would be because he boosted the ratings, but apparently they've already selected Tina Fey and some other clown for next year. Tina Fey, by the way, who is political, who trashed laughing stock. She is talented, but she did a number on Sarah Palin. And Ricky Gervais had a lot of courage.
Yeah, Amy Poehler and Tina Fey will be doing the Golden Globes in the future. They're funny. I mean, it's sad that all these people have become so political because, I enjoy Alec Baldwin, but he's just over the top with his stuff. He's said something today about Trump supporters are destroying the morality of this country. It's like, really? You don't think all the rapists and pedophiles in Hollywood have anything to do with it?
He's been that way for a long time. He's a very insipid individual. He's not very bright, number one. And fortunately, he has a nice brother. I forget his first name, Baldwin. Stephen Baldwin. He's actually a good person. He's a conservative. And this is the way they are. I met Alec Baldwin a number of years ago at a White House Correspondents' Dinner. The guy was so cracked out on drugs, it was unbelievable. You couldn't even talk to the guy.
Yikes. So Larry, 4KCD is asking me to ask you how you plan on winning your cases if the fix is in. How can you possibly win?
Because occasionally you'll find a good judge. Occasionally. And I've said this. I said this from my days at Judicial Watch. If you win 1 in 10, you're doing really well. People say to me, I write these WorldNet Daily columns. And there are always these plants on WorldNet Daily. I read the comments because I'm curious. And they'll say, Klayman loses every case, And you know what? They can take it where the sun don't shine. Here's the difference between me and a lot of people, is that I'm not afraid to lose. If you're afraid to lose, you'll never win.
Right.
And I learned that a long time ago. I remember once I lost a club championship in golf because I missed 2 2-foot putts in the last 2 holes. I was so worried about missing them, particularly in front of my then girlfriend, who was in a cart with some other guy at the time.
Oof.
I just choked, and I tried to figure out why is it that I missed those 2 putts that I could make with my eyes closed. And it's because I was afraid of losing. And you cannot be afraid of losing, because if you're afraid, you'll never win. And I have won major cases. Just to give you an example, in the last 5 years, I won the NSA cases twice. I won for Sheriff Arpaio on the illegal immigration, the mass amnesty of Obama. I successfully defended Jerry Corsi, and there are other victories as well. But percentage-wise, okay, because of these federal judges, they're not letting these cases go to discovery or to trial, and they're pulling dicta out of a Supreme Court decision, misusing it. It's a case called Bell Atlantic versus Twombly, where it says that if a complaint is not plausible, they can dismiss it right off the bat. Well, they're using that to dismiss cases that are plausible because they don't like them politically. Because you have these political hacks, the Obama and Clinton appointees, and even the Trump appointees. They don't want the stuff in their courtroom. So I have to talk plainly. It may not be in my self-interest to do this, Jason. I've never done it in my self-interest. Now, look, if I want to raise a lot of money, like Hannity raises advertising dollars, or Judicial Watch raises money for FOIA cases that don't accomplish anything. All they get is documents. But you can see all these documents don't lead to anything. If I wanted to do that, I could play their game. But I want the American people to understand we've got a real problem here. And we need a constitutional convention. We need to come up with a new way to select judges, not through political patronage. We don't give them life tenure so they can do whatever they want. and they should be held accountable if they make intentionally wrong or grossly negligent decisions. We should remove their immunity, because they are the biggest threat to our country today, are these federal judges, because they're there to protect us. Instead, they become, the protectors of the rich, powerful, and the elite against the people. And that's exactly what happened in 1776, which is why we're doing our citizens' grand juries. The people have a right to enforce our own laws. They have the right to enforce natural law, the law of man, the law of God. And in fact, if you go back and you look at the writings, over the holidays, I was reading a book called The Writings of the Founding Fathers by someone named Tilius. See if you can get that. He sent it to me. He likes what I do. He thinks similarly. And our founding fathers were very learned people. They, were philosophers. They were lawyers. They were scientists. If you go back and you see the way they write, it's unbelievable. Now, they wrote that way because they were trying to influence the populace, the colonialists, to coalesce, to come together, to fight for a new nation. But the way they wrote was so far above what the people today can understand, because most of the people, I joke that my dog has a bigger vocabulary in terms of words than most millennials today. And she doesn't say like every 3 words. Okay?
She's a very sweet dog.
She might say lick, but she doesn't say like. Okay.
Now, Larry, is this the book here? The Hamilton collection?
No, that's not the book.
What's the author's name? Sorry, what was his name?
Tillius. It's a pseudonym.
See if we can find that. I don't know. I'm having a tough
I might
time
have
finding
it in my briefcase if I can go off camera quickly.
Well, it's up to you. We can do whatever you like. A lot of people,
Let me
Larry,
see. I'll bend down here.
Sure. Now, people know that I support the citizens' grand juries, and for me, it was a great learning experience. I think that even if that's the only thing we get from it, people get to see how a grand jury type experience goes on. But a lot of people, Larry, have questioned me saying, there we go, there's the book. A lot of people have questioned me saying, what are these citizens' grand juries going to do? How can we answer those questions for people? Well, the answer is, number one, I'll never resort to violence. I won't resort to force, okay? But we do have the right to impanel a grand jury. Justice Scalia, in 1992, as I've said before, in a case, United States versus Williams, said the grand jury belongs to the American people, not the 3 branches of government. So when we met and we indicted Comey with testimony of Dr. Corsi, Comey tried to suborn perjury and obstruct justice by telling him if he didn't lie, he would be indicted. That was a legitimate indictment. We have the right to try. This is what happened in the Old West. We didn't have a Justice Department until 1870. And we have a right to do that too. We also have a right to have citizens' courts and to mete out sentences. Now, the problem comes when you seek to enforce those sentences. I'm not going to do it. Excuse me, I'm sorry. That's all right. Whoa, very loud. Must be just calling me from the grave. So we're not going to enforce those sentences unlawfully by resorting to force, although citizens do have a right to do citizens' arrest. It actually would be lawful, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to ask President Trump to enforce it. Hopefully he'll be reelected. Hopefully he'll then have the guts in his second term to do what he should have done in his first term. His tweeting's fine, but his tweeting doesn't accomplish anything. I'll call him Tweety Pie. I love the guy, but I'll tell you something. He's been timid too in taking on the deep state, as you can see by what's happening with Barr and what's happening with Hoover, what will happen with Durham. He is the head of the Justice Department. He's the head of the executive branch, which is why he was allowed to say to the Ukrainian ambassador, I asked you to do an investigation. He is our chief law enforcement officer. It's not impeachable. It's not a crime. It was stupid, given the politics in Washington, but it's not a crime. It's not impeachable. But, he needs to take control of his own Justice Department, and the hell with the Democrats and the hell with the rhino Republicans. I agree with you there, Larry. And he very well might get convicted. We're rambling a little bit here, Jason, but he's on the verge of getting convicted because you have people like Susan Collins, senators now, that say they want to call witnesses. And who are the witnesses going to be? They're likely going to be
people like John Bolton who have it in for the president. I'm sure that I like John Bolton, by the way, but apparently he took it personally, his differences with the president, as some people have,
Right.
and he's out to get him. But the Republicans don't have the courage to call Joe Biden or Hunter Biden. That's not going to happen. So you got these rhino Republicans like Collins and Murkowski and others. Mitt Romney would love to see the president gone. There you got three. And, he could very well get convicted in the Senate.
I very much dislike John Bolton. Don't trust him at all. He was in the Project for a New American Century. He's a definite war hawk, neocon, and I think he got in there specifically to create wars and screw the president over. I was watching his interview, President Trump's interview with Laura Ingraham just the other night, and I mean, he's eager to call these witnesses. I've been saying since the first day, why don't they get in there and, do a motion to dismiss this thing for failure to state a claim? There's not a crime that's been named. And we've seen now, just last week, Josh Hawley, the senator from Missouri, has put the heat on Nancy Pelosi, saying if she doesn't transmit these articles of impeachment, he was going to call for a motion to dismiss the thing. I don't understand why the president would want to take a risk of going to a trial and not just demand a motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim. Obstruction of Congress and abuse of power aren't crimes.
McConnell plays both sides of the street. McConnell sticks the knife into Republicans he doesn't like my client and friend Judge Roy Moore in Alabama, who's a true conservative. McConnell may serve the interests of conservatives in some areas, but he's a sleazy politician. And, ask Mark Levin. He's on his case all the time. I don't always agree with Mark, but I agree with him on this. So McConnell doesn't want to do something that jeopardizes, his own fortune. And that's why they're going to go through what's a charade of an impeachment trial if, in fact, no witnesses are called. But I'll tell you something, I think there's probably going to be witnesses. That's my guess, and I think the president's going to get nailed by people that have it in for him unfairly.
So you think a motion to dismiss would not work because Mitch McConnell would not grant it?
That's correct. Mitch McConnell, in his heart of hearts, would like to see the knife in Trump's back. You had that great meme several weeks back of Caesar.
Right.
With Trump's head on it. They would like him gone. Okay, God knows what Trump might do to upset their little Republican establishment apple cart in a second term. I wouldn't trust the guy as far as I could throw him. I wouldn't trust anybody who looks like a turtle,
But I mean, when you've got Josh Hawley in there, he's a Harvard lawyer. He presents his case and he says, you've got to dismiss this for failure to state a claim. There's no statute that specifically addresses obstruction of Congress. There's no statute that specifically addresses abuse of power.
Yeah.
How could they possibly have it move forward?
Why doesn't that happen? Because that's a setup. That Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the Democrats would like nothing better than to have that happen, because then they would say in the general election, what was Trump hiding? Why wouldn't he come forward? Why wouldn't he testify? Why didn't he want witnesses? He's hiding something. We didn't get the full truth. Now, the Democrats don't think that Trump will be convicted. I don't think he will either. I'm just saying there's a chance that he could be, but they'll use this for political fodder. And that's why McConnell will not allow the matter to be dismissed. Instead, he'd rather go through the charade of an impeachment trial, which has risks for the president. If Bolton comes in and says, look, the guy, talked about a quid pro quo. I mean, I think it's been reported, I don't know if it's true or not, that Bolton's prepared to testify that it was like a mafia fix. And, that doesn't do any good for the president, but McConnell's not going to, for political reasons, allow for this matter to be dismissed, because then it'll be used against him and his senators in the next election in 2020 and beyond.
Well, you raise a fair point that the Democrats would then say that they didn't get a fair trial, and people would believe that. It's amazing. The law really has very little to do with it. It's this political chess game where they make a move. I mean, I do feel that Josh Hawley put the pressure on Nancy Pelosi to bring the thing forward, but I see where you're coming from, that McConnell can't just cause it to happen because it'll look like a cover-up. So Trump seemed very confident in that interview with Laura Ingraham, saying that he wants to bring the witnesses. But doesn't the same thing hold true if they don't have Hunter Biden, if they don't have Joe Biden testify? Trump will just say, what are they hiding?
No, because the Republicans have the ability to call witnesses, but the Republicans won't call them.
Wow.
Republicans will be able to call witnesses.
Why will they not call them? Why?
Why? For the reason I just said.
It's just because it's you scratch my back.
And also because the buddy system, the club, Joe Biden is their colleague.
Right.
There's an unwritten camaraderie in Washington, D.C. that you don't go against your colleagues in the Senate. You don't. Because this time it's Biden. Next time it might be me. So let's all just play the charade. Let's rake in the money. Let's stuff it into our pockets.
Right.
Let's acquire more power. Let's wear $3,000 suits, maybe $5,000, if they're going to, Yves Saint Laurent or something like that. And our special cufflinks and everything else, and they're just into themselves, and hey, you know what? We're senators. So, any women we want to sleep with, we can do that too, if we want to. So, or men in that matter. But
yeah, so it's the whole don't gore my ox thing that you've spoken about. Gore my ox.
One of the jokes of Ricky Gervais, which I thought was really good, is he said, one thing that you all have in common in the Hollywood establishment is that Ronan Farrow is coming for you. Okay, and they just freaked out. And then he says, this has gotten rather boring. I'm paraphrasing because we can't play the video. He says, these TV shows are boring. Why don't we just give the award to Netflix, go home, and take these 3 hours and we can binge watch a Netflix series, and get it over with. And then he adds, there's this show about somebody that wants to commit suicide in the first season, but of course he doesn't commit suicide, and there's a second season, just like Jeffrey Epstein. And then he says, oh, by the way, he's your friend, right? So, I mean, he really hit a nerve, and humor tells the truth, and that's true here too, because they're all buddies. They're all partners in crime up there.
Now, Larry, what do you think about this?
Some people, they cover for each other.
What do you think about this new evidence that came out in the Epstein case on 60 Minutes? They presented us with all this nonsense. I mean, Barr had a press conference, not to say that the shooting in Pensacola wasn't extremely important. It was, but it seems like that took 2 or 3 weeks, and they had this comprehensive investigation. And here, Epstein, it's months, and we're seeing fake evidence and nonsense.
There's a good example. Look, Barr knows this was not a suicide. He knows that. He has that ability. And he doesn't want to admit the incompetence of his Bureau of Prisons, which is part of the Justice Department, that occurred on his watch. And frankly, maybe he's not that unhappy about it either, because there are a lot of Republicans who also were, I don't know how to put it, but shall we say partaking with Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. Right. So, it was endemic, not just in Hollywood, but in Washington, D.C. The guy was, he was a master pimp, and he probably was tied in with the mafia. And I believe the mafia did it. And I still believe the Clintons are the number one suspects because they had the most to lose. I believe that it needs to be investigated whether they ordered a mafia hit.
Well, but I mean, wasn't it more the intelligence agencies, the CIA, the Mossad, all these MI6? They seem to be more connected with Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell and Robert Maxwell. These are all top people in intelligence agencies around the world. He had that passport from Saudi Arabia.
Well, who do you think they work with? Okay, remember Kennedy's assassination, Jack Ruby? There are theories that the mafia was working with the CIA. That they
the
had
button man is
the
some
enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so who knows? I don't know. I'm not making any accusations, but obviously Barr knows this was not a suicide, and he's lying to the American people by holding it back.
And you've been into federal prison facilities to see some of your clients. They were telling us initially that Jeffrey Epstein had these paper sheets so he couldn't hang himself. We see this picture and it's like Bed Bath & Beyond. He's got 50 sets of sheets in there. What the hell is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, well, what's the guy's name? The pathologist, Baden, right?
Baden, yeah.
He's been hired by the Epstein family to try to get the truth. I think the guy's very credible in what he said. He's backing it up. He's putting his reputation on the line. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that Jeffrey Epstein did not commit suicide.
Right. We've even seen, Kevin Shipp told me just the other day that this mark on Epstein's neck couldn't possibly have been made by a bed sheet, certainly not the ones we're being shown. He said that this looks more like a mark made by a ligature, like a wire, a particular type of, weapon to strangle somebody with.
Could be. I'm not an expert in that, but for the Justice Department to say silent. Look at Stephen Paddock in Las Vegas, and we don't know anything about that to this day. You believe the Justice Department doesn't know? You believe that? I believe Paddock was probably a government informant or agent, and he went off the reservation, killed all these people, and they don't want to admit. The intelligence agencies or the FBI or the CIA or the NSA or whoever, they don't want to admit that he was working for us, so they cover the whole thing up. Quickly after Paddock committed all these massacres, the FBI went in and raided his house and took all the evidence off the market. It just vanished.
Yeah.
So,
you should actually...
Look, our government is corrupt top to bottom.
Right.
Top to bottom.
Yeah.
It's a cesspool. Can't believe a thing they say. And that's why the judges are so important, because they were put here to protect us. They were put here to as a safety valve to revolution. So we didn't have to go through 1776 again. So we didn't have yes men on the bench. And now we have yes women on the bench. And by and large, there are some exceptions, of course. But by and large, there are a bunch of political hacks. And the American people are beginning to see that. And that's very dangerous.
Yeah. Just quickly on Paddock, I know you're very busy and probably don't have time, but if you do find some time, you should review some of the John Cullen research on this. It seems that, body camera footage released by the Las Vegas Metro PD a year or so after the event show that the window of this hotel room wasn't even broken at 10:30 at night. Paddock was already dead, so I personally don't believe he did any shooting. Something very bizarre went on there, but it seems to be linked to the Saudi Arabian royal family or members of the royal family, and there's a lot of crimes that are happening related to Saudi Arabia. Just earlier today, William Barr had that press conference where they were talking more about how Apple should help them unlock this guy's iPhone than they were talking about the concept of Saudi Arabian military being trained in the United States. They were defending the Saudis and beating up on encryption technology.
Well, because the Saudis stuff money into the pockets of both political parties. Yeah. They have an embassy in Washington, D.C., right across from the Kennedy Center. I had two security guards when I was running Freedom Watch that had previously been security guards for Saudi Arabian ambassador in Bandar.
Oh.
One of them named Darrell, told me that while he was working for the prince, for the ambassador, that the head of the FBI, Louis Freeh, as he was leaving the FBI, announced he was going to retire, went over to the embassy and tried to sell his services, his new consulting firm, to Saudi Arabia while he was still FBI director. And he was sitting there. Darrell was sitting there, listening to it.
Unbelievable.
And isn't that unbelievable?
It is.
That here you have our FBI director after 9/11 trying to sell his services so he gets a nice retainer from Saudi Arabia after he leaves as FBI director while he is still FBI director. So that tells you everything.
I think I never trusted Louis Freeh, Larry. He came in after William Sessions was fired by Bill Clinton mysteriously the night before the discovery of Vince Foster's body. So Louis Freeh is another guy who likes to basically tank investigations. And
he played both sides. And,
right?
Nothing happened in China-gate. Janet Reno was, orchestrating his, puppeteer act over there at the FBI. I remember one time I got a death threat. An email that was sent to me, I'm going to kill you and your family and everybody else. And I sent it over. I was at the height of, my fighting Clinton and impeachment and everything else. And I sent it to Louis Freeh. and I got an email back from his office. The FBI director will consider looking at this, but what are you going to do for him? I'm paraphrasing.
Wow.
Which meant
Whoa.
I had a lawsuit against Louis Freeh for Notre Trulock for busting into Louis Freeh's my Notre Trulock's computer. It was over the Wenho Lee scandal when this scientist had stolen all of our nuclear codes at Los Alamos, and Louis Freeh was negligent, sat on it, or for whatever reason sat on it, and did nothing. Okay, and Notre was very critical of him, and his agents went in and busted into his computers, gun butted his dog. Dog almost got killed, and then so Freeh then says, "What's in it for me?" Translated, that means, are you going to drop the lawsuit that you sued me on? Case went all the way to the Fourth Circuit. Fourth Circuit said I had a cause of action against Louis Freeh for violating the constitutional rights of Notre Trulock. After I left to run for the U.S. Senate, Judicial Watch screwed it up, and the case was dismissed. But Louis Freeh is one corrupt hombre.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I remember that specifically.
I agree with that. Louis Freeh also had, after his career at the FBI, a pretty bad accident in an SUV that's left him, I guess, I don't know, blind or disfigured in some way. So I always wonder when guys like this who are so connected to so much screwy business have car accidents like that. Don't really know too much about that.
Well, you know who Louis Freeh's friend was? It was, who was that spy that, Hansen, right? Hansen lived right next door to Louis Freeh in Great Falls. I didn't live far away. And at that point, I was married to a prior wife, and we went to St. Catherine's Church. They were all members of that church. So was Scalia. Okay, they were all buddies. So Hansen was Louis's right-hand man. He turned out to be the most heinous spy in American history. He was, giving the Russians unbelievable amounts of information. So, this is the world we live in, Jason. It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse.
Kevin Shipp was involved in a CIA investigation that, in part, uncovered Robert Hansen's spying.
Yeah. My former father-in-law used to say to me, he was Italian from Rome. He said, appreciate today because tomorrow is going to be even worse. Okay. And he had a good sense of humor, but he meant it. And that's the world we live in today. If we don't change things, and that's why I want people to join us at Freedom Watch, join our Justice League, support our citizens' grand juries, support our hard-hitting cases. We do get judges from time to time that will enforce the rule of law. We have to do whatever we can and enforce, support me, support you so we can communicate to people. That's important. We need to educate them. They need to know how bad it is. They need to get up off the couch. They need to turn Fox News off and start doing something, rather than titillating each night for Sean Hannity telling you justice is around the corner. It's not around the corner. What's around the corner is higher ratings for him and higher advertising dollars for Fox News. And people need to rise up again, and we need to do it peacefully and legally. We're going to have a constitutional Third Continental Congress sometime in the spring of next year where we suggest reforms because we need to change the way we select judges. We can't have these political hacks on the bench. We have to have people that are accountable to the American people, who aren't above the law, who aren't there for life, who don't scratch the backs of those that got them their judgeship. To me, that's the most important thing. Where does the name Judicial Watch come from? It comes from watching judges. I then use judges to try to watch the other two branches of government. That doesn't work so well anymore. But the judges are the solution, and the judges are the problem. It begins and ends with the judges. Let's go to the old book of Isaiah in the Old Testament, which both Christians and Jews revere. And it says that God will return the tarnished city to the faithful city. And he looks to the counselors and judges to do it. He looks to them. He will do it with his divine grace through them. That means the lawyers and the judges. He's looking to them. But where are they today? They're cowards. They're nowhere to be found. They scratch their own backs. They take care of their own interests, just like it was in ancient Hebrew times. And I'll tell you something, God, I'm not a preacher. Maybe I should be. Maybe I should be a priest, a rabbi, or a reverend. I can be all three since I'm a Jewish Christian. but, but the reality is this, is that if we don't get our house in order, God destroyed, civilizations over and over again. He taught the Jewish people a lesson over and over again. And, I think we're going to be taught that lesson again if we don't shape up, because otherwise we'll be shipping out to hell.
Larry, one quick question about the Saudi embassy. Is there any significance to it being like right next to the Watergate Hotel here?
Well, the significance is they couldn't have gotten that plot of land if our government didn't allow them to buy it. And look at that and the Canadian embassy are outrageous, frankly, but the Canadians are fairly harmless. But
what's outrageous about the Canadian one?
Are not harmless. That's very close to the State Department. I used to live across the street, and they get prime turf because their nest is feathered because they stuff money into the pockets of the Democrats and the Republicans.
Huh. And, of course, we had Justin Trudeau saying that he was doubting the Iranian story, that it was an accident that they shot down that Ukrainian jet. What do you think about that?
Well, Justin Trudeau is an idiot. He only has one thing going for him, his name Trudeau. So, that's a big name in Canada, but he's a moron, to be blunt.
He was pretty clear that he didn't really believe what was being said. What's your take on what's happening in Iran? We have got just about 5 minutes here. You want to close out with that?
I'm very pleased with what's happening in Iran. I remember back in 2009, I was hopeful that they would overthrow the regime, and then Obama supported the regime through Voice of America and other ways. But yes, I'm hopeful that they will, and that's why I've had many Iranian clients who've been freedom fighters, people that have died in Iran prison, like Akbar Mohammadi, who was the first student leader in modern time to advocate regime change, and his brother manager, who, was tortured. He escaped. He had his genitals burned and everything else beyond imagination.
Sure.
Akbar's body was mutilated and thrown back like trash, in front of the family. These people are barbarians. They are savages. And the Iranian people will rise up eventually if we support them. And the president's giving them some support. They deserve more support than what they've got. Frankly, they should be armed. We should be arming them and let them get rid of this regime from the inside.
But Larry, hasn't regime change been disastrous every single time we've tried it?
Well, I didn't say that we should send our troops. How could it be disastrous, Jason, when you've got these to call them anti-Semites and anti-Christians is mild. These people are the delegates of the devil. They are the devil. The devil's inhabited them. So, yes, if the Iranian people can take care of business, let them do it. I'm not saying that we should be there. No.
Right. Got it.
I think maybe a couple megatons to take care of their nuclear facilities. That would be the only intervention I would do. But let the Iranian people do it. Let's arm them. Let's let them do it.
Well, listen, to bookend the show and close out where we began, I'm hopeful, Larry. See, I've been listening to everything you've been saying, and, you've had rare instances where you've had good judges. I'm holding out hope that we'll have a rare instance where something will happen and the Clintons, or at least somebody important, will be held to account. I know you don't think they will. I'm just hoping for a long shot over here.
Well, those are two questions there, Jason. I'll be brief. Number one, judges can't influence what's happening with regard to prosecutions. That comes out of the Justice Department, the Bill Barr case. There are some good judges out there. They're few and far between. We've drawn some of them from time to time. Judge Hainan in the Southern District of Texas is a good judge. He ended Obama's amnesty. He played a role in that. But by and large, it's not the case. Now, you have to be honest with the American people if you're going to get the change. Things can't go along like this. So it may not be in my self-interest to say that justice is not around the corner unless we do citizens' grand juries, but I've got to tell the truth because you need to understand the truth before you can change things. And for those naysayers out there that say, oh, Larry loses all these cases, all I can say is the heck with you. I'm trying to be nice. I'd use another word that begins with an F. But I'm trying. What are you doing other than watching Sean Hannity and doing posts? I'm trying.
Well, we should
And we
remind
need
people,
your
Larry,
support.
you're the only lawyer in history to get a judgment against a sitting president.
That's right. But what did that accomplish, Jason? The Clintons are still out there. That was Bill Clinton. Because Judge Lamberth, who I used to have a lot of respect for, he took a dive in that, just like he took a dive recently with Sheriff Joe Arpaio. And I like the guy personally. I think he's a good guy, but even he did not have the guts. He did not.
You reminded me of one more thing.
You
reminded me of one more thing. And I mean, I recognize that you may not want to say anything about this, but one of your favorite judges, who I have had the opportunity to see you interact with in his courtroom, was recently in the news with regard to Michael Flynn. I'm talking, of course, about Emmett Sullivan. Mike Moore was telling us on More Pain that someone in the Department of Justice told Mike that Emmett Sullivan is owned and influenced by the DOJ.
Well, they're all influenced by the DOJ. Let me tell you, ex parte communications go on all the time that you don't know about with judges. And, when I said this, I like Sullivan as a human being, as a person. I think he's the best of the Democrat judges on that court. And I'll give credit when credit is due, but he's not perfect. No, he's not perfect. And I like Judge Lamberth, too. He's my friend. But, I've got to call it out when it happens. And when I see them run away from things, I can't stay silent. Somebody's got to tell the truth.
Yeah. And you were on the money when you said that although Sidney Powell's effort was noble, it was going to fail because Flynn had already pled guilty.
Well, she rubbed Judge Sullivan's face in it. You can't do that. Okay, going on Hannity and Fox and grandstanding it in front of him. This is what happened last time when Flynn got into difficulty with Sullivan. Is that, he's in charge. These guys, they're there for life, Jason. They think that they rule the school. So when you start going on TV shows and telling the judge what to do, their reaction is a big F you. Okay, that's what it is. And, regrettably, I think Flynn is going to be sentenced to some time, and he should withdraw his plea, and he should fight it out at this point if he can, if Sullivan allows him to withdraw his plea. But that was not the way to handle it. Sidney Powell did a lot of good work. She was, I'm sure, well-intentioned, but you can't grandstand it on Sean Hannity and expect the judge is not going to react.
Yeah. Well, I think the sentencing is coming up next for Michael Flynn. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, but didn't seem to go their way, unfortunately. Well, Larry, I appreciate you taking the time tonight. Of course, everybody's going to go and visit freedomwatchusa.org. They can follow your radio show, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. And what else would you like to leave everybody with before we wrap up the show?
People should support our citizens' grand juries. They should support our hard-hitting cases, but they also need to support our educational efforts, because what I'm saying is necessary for the American people to understand that unless they know the facts of life, we're not going to have change. We can't keep deluding ourselves, hoping for the best, but getting the worst.
Yeah. All right, Larry. Well, thanks for your insights. I always appreciate having you on, your humor, and all the stuff you share with us. It's always great. I'll speak to you real soon. And I want to thank everybody for watching and remind people that if you're watching, you got to support the show here, because the truth is free, but getting all this equipment together and paying for all the subscriptions to the services that allow me to broadcast the truth to you is not. So please become a sponsor on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and thank you, Larry.
God bless. I hope that they do support you. You're important.
Thanks very much. Take care, everybody.